Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Mem Dalid. We are at the Gemara on the bottom line of Mem Gimel Amud Bet. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. So yesterday we started with the Mishnah, or we concluded with the Mishnah, excuse me, which contained the following debate regarding getting rid of idols other than through throwing them into the Dead Sea. So previously we had seen that the way that you get rid of an idol, if you find a vessel that has the sun or the moon or a dragon on it, that you need to throw it because we assume that it has been worshipped. Therefore, it is considered an idol, and it may not have been nullified. And we're not going to have the Jew nullify it because once he picks it up, or we're worried that once he picks it up, he won't be able to nullify it because it'll become in the possession of a Jew. And so, as a result, he needs to just throw it into the Yam HaMelech, into the Dead Sea. And then, so now on that, we had Rabbi Yossi coming in and saying in the Mishnah that we concluded with yesterday that that's not the only option. You can grind up an idol and scatter it to the wind or cast it into the sea. But the rabbis say no, that's going to be problematic to do that because even that will result in its becoming fertilizer. It'll end up being used as fertilizer, which is still prohibited. Because it says in the Torah that the lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma, right? Let me just find it. Below yidbak biyadcha me'uma min acherim leman yeshuv Hashem mecharon apo benasan lecha rachamim v'rachamcha v'hirbacha kasher nishba la'avosecha. So again, that you shouldn't have it in your hand once it's been set aside as being just something that you can't deal with. And so as a result, this would still be some sort of benefit that someone would get from it. So that was what we saw in the Mishnah. And so now as we pick up on the Gemara on the last line of Mem Gimel Amud Bet, we say, Tanya, we've got a brisa that's going to continue this conversation from our Mishnah. Amar lahem Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said back to the rabbis, V'halo kvar nemar, 1 second. You're telling me that you cannot crush and throw out into the wind or throw into the sea or throw into another body of water these idols, but listen to what it says in the Torah. Ve'eschataschem, right? This is a pasuk in Dvarim, so we'll see it in a couple weeks Torah portion. Asher asisem es ha'egel, the sin that you did, that you took a calf, namely the golden calf. L'kachti ve'esrof oto ba'esh, I took it and I burned it in fire. Ve'akoso so tachon, and I ground it up, heitev, really well, ad asher dak la'afar, until it was like dust. Ve'ashlich es afaro, and then I threw it. So el hanachal hayored minahar, into the water that was coming down, into the stream that was coming down from the mountain. And so here we see that in fact you can in fact crush up a metal idol and throw it to the wind. So doesn't that show that I'm right and you're wrong, rabbis? So Amrulo, the rabbi said back to Rabbi Yossi, no. Again, we're now 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth line on Mem Daled Amud Aleph. And it's the Masoras Hashas corrects it. It's Amrulo because the Rabbi Yossi is having a conversation with the Chachamim in our Mishnah, with the rabbis that are continuing that conversation in our Mishnah. So it's a plural group. So Amrulo, so they said to him, Misham Raya, that's your proof? Harehu Omer. But 1 second, the Torah says, when we hear about the story of the Egel Azav in the first place, Vayizer al Panei Hamayim, he tosses the powder he sprinkled it over the water. Vayash ges Bnei Israel, and he gave it to drink. to the Jewish people. Lonis gavan el labod kisotos. No, the ideal is that effectively this drink was like the sota water for a sota. That in fact, what does it do? It tells you, did you engage in the sin? And so everybody who engaged in inappropriate idol worship and drank from this water that Moshe gave to them to drink would therefore be punished and die. But it was not in order for anybody to, but in an ordinary case, you would not be allowed to just throw it into that water because it would be we'd be concerned that it would turn into fertilizer and it would end up helping something grow. So that was effort number one by Rabbi Yossi, and we continue. Rabbi Yossi says back, Amar Lahem, where I think we're going to have four different efforts by Rabbi Yossi. So Amar Lahem, Rabbi Yossi said, one second, V'alo kvar nemar, don't we have the following verse? This is from Divrei Hayamim. V'gam ma'acha, we'll use the corrections here. V'gam ma'acha aim asa hamelech, based on the Masoras Hashas. Hesira migvira asher asa la'ashera miflatzes. The Gomer. So what is this talking about? This is dealing with King Asa, who eliminated all of the idols that were in existence. And it says that he even took down his mom. He deposed his mom. Now, actually, the Radak notes that it's actually his grandmother, because Ma'acha was not his mother. It was his father's mother. But in any event, he took her down from being queen because she made a miflatzes to an Asherah. Now, what is a miflatzes? We'll see that in a moment. V'yadak v'yisrof b'nachal kidron. And what did he do to the thing that was created? He ground it up and burned it. Or what did he do with the Asherah? He ground it up and burnt it in the Kidron Valley. So Amrulo. So again, so doesn't that show that you can grind something up and that would be a sufficient destruction, and then you toss it to the wind, and that's fine. So no, it is not necessarily a proof, because Amrulo, the rabbi said back to him, Misham Raya Nachal Kidron Enu Megadol Tzmachim. You don't grow anything in Nachal Kidron, and therefore, because nothing can grow there, it's not going to serve as fertilizer. There was never the concern of serving as fertilizer. So, Below, 1 second, are you telling me, now we sort of interrupt the conversation and we pause and we say, hey, that doesn't seem to be accurate, that the Kidron Valley is not a place of vegetation. V'hatanan, because we have the Masoras Hashas changes it from a brisa to a mishnah. It's a mishnah, so it's a v'hatanan. And this is a mishnah in Yoma Daf Nun Chet Amud Bet. Elu ve'elu misarvin ba'ama. It's talking about the different blood that is from the animals that are slaughtered, the inner and outer sin offerings that are slaughtered on Yom Kippur. So all the leftover blood mixes together in the Amah. That's the special channel that existed in the Beit HaMikdash for blood to flow out. V'yotzin l'nachal kidron, and then it goes out to flow into the nachal kidron. V'nimkarin l'gananin l'zevel, and for gardeners, it's sold to them as fertilizer. Umolen behen, and you have to be careful that you buy it from the Beis Hamikdash, because otherwise it would be me'ilah. This is leftovers from a korban, and so as a result, you have to be careful that, because otherwise it's me'ilah if you just take it. And Rashi points out, Elu ve'elu, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi on Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Elu ve'elu, damim hachitzonim v'damim hapnimim, the blood from the outer sin offerings and the inner sin offerings, shishireyen, that is left over, nishbachen al yesod ha-mizbeach, they are poured on the base of the mizbeach. Hachitzon, the outer mizbeach, the copper mizbeach that is in the courtyard. Vehein yordin min hayesod l'ritzbah, and then it goes down from the base to the floor. and then from the floor to the ama, to the channel that is going to lead it out of the Beis Hamikdash, and specifically go to the Kidron Valley. So Mikomos, so the Gemara answers, yeah, I understand. That implies that there is some potential vegetation because it's the gardeners that presumably were also in the Kidron Valley would be the ones that would purchase it. Mikomos, Yeshbo. There are different places in the Kidron Valley. Yesh makom megadol tzmachim. There are some places that grow vegetation, and that's where they would the blood mixture would come to, and they would use that to fertilize their gardens. The yesh makom shein megadol tzmachim, and there are other places that don't grow vegetation. Now, Tozos asked the following question, or actually suggests that the following answer. Mekomos Yeshbo, second Tosos, Haya Yachol Taritz. The Gemara could have answered here, Shagananim Hayu Mimakom Acher, that the gardeners were just coming from somewhere else. But I will note that at the same time, if you leave fertilizer in a good location, presumably something will grow there. And so as a result, eventually. And so that's why I think the Gemara may not have wanted to give that answer. But in any event, the bottom line is, also, I'm not sure how easy it would be to transport that. But okay, go ahead.
Where is the Kidron Valley?
That is a good question. I am not sure. I presume that it is somewhere immediately south of Yerushalayim, but I'm not sure. I will try and look that up and circulate it maybe in the no, I'll circulate it in the WhatsApp group as to where precisely the Kidron Valley is. So we referenced this thing called miflotzes. Again, although the word in the pasuk is miflotzes, even though the Gemara is about to ask miflatzta. What?
Miflatzta, it says.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying that. The pasuk says miflotzes, not miflatzta, but the Gemara here has miflotzta. So, again, I think that this too probably should be changed. Again, if you take a look at the pasuk, you'll see it says miflotzes. So, in any event, no, I guess it does say miflatzta also. So, but the point is now I'm looking at it. It says both miflotzes and then miflatzta. But in any event, so my miflatzta, what is this miflatzta that was in the pasuk? So, because it's the late afterwards, it said it's her. It said the pasuk is v'gamacha emasa hamelach hesira migvira asher asasala asheru miflatzes, and then it says vayichros asa es miflatzta. Vayadak vayisro b'nachal kidron. So again, what is this miflatzta that he then demolished? What was the thing that she did sort of in her worship of this idol? So Amar Rav Yehuda dehavim mafle litzinusa. It was an extraordinary depravity. Kedetani Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef taught. Rav Yosef was blind and often would therefore be one who would translate because of the prohibition of sort of reading of saying verses by heart in the Torah, in the Tanakh. Rav Yosef would often give those verses in Aramaic translation, and he would and he was an expert in that because he would focus on the translation, because that you can say from memory. So Kimin Zachrus As-Salah, she made some kind of male structure. A phallus is what it has it defined here. And she did inappropriate things with it every day. So Amar Lahen.
I'm just curious here. This macha it's an interesting name word. It appears in Chumash as one of the children of Nachor, after the story of Betuel and Rivka, at the end of Parshat Vayera, right? Where that gives the genealogy, and it says one of the children of Nachor with his Pelegish was Macha. So actually, I think it's the last word in the Parsha. I wonder if that's the same Macha, if it's related, or how did it?
I mean, it's unless she lived an extraordinarily long time, it isn't going to be the same. I mean, this is end of Divrei Hayamim Bet. So it's very, very unlikely that it's the same
Correct.
person. But you're absolutely right that it does. Oh, and also, is that macha? This macha is with an ayin. Is that macha with an ayin or with an aleph? I don't remember.
That ma'acha is, I think, with an iron.
Oh, also with an I. Okay, so then it's the same name. So that's a good question. So all right, but the bottom line is that there are a few names that are used a couple of times through Tanakh and are very likely to be different people. We don't always say, even though we have a general concept of conservation of people in the Tanakh, where we say that if two people could be the same, they likely are the same. Here, I don't think I'm not aware of anybody saying that it's the same person. So Amr Lahen Rabbi Yossi. So now effort number 3 from your Rabbi Yossi. So hello, Kvar Nemar. 1 second, didn't it already say? This is in Melachim Bet Perak Yud Chet Pasuk Dalid. V'chitas nechash hanechoshes asher asa Moshe. That we had a couple of weeks ago in the Torah portion that Moshe made the copper serpent in order for the people who had been bitten
Right.
by the fiery serpents to help them survive that experience, and that would help them survive. And now, in eventually, it became something that was worshipped, and so as a result, King Chizkiyahu ground it up, and so that shows again that grinding it up is a way of destroying an idol. So Amrulo, 1 second. Or the rabbis say back to him, no, Misham Raya, that's your proof. Harehu Omer. How did this serpent get created in the first place? Well, if we look back, and it says in Bamidbar Kaf Aleph Parakhet, Pasuk Chet, excuse me, Vayomer Hashem El Moshe, Asalacha Saraf, make for yourself this serpent, this fiery serpent. Lecha, meaning Mishelcha, you have to use your own money. Ve'ein Adam Oser Davar She'enu Shalo, and you cannot prohibit something that doesn't belong to you. So as a result, if somebody were to go and worship my computer, and somebody comes around who thinks who has been asleep for the last 100 years, doesn't know what a computer is. They see my computer and they say, "Oh, this is like a god." So that is, and they bow down to it and treat it like an idol. That does, even though idols are ordinarily prohibited to benefit from, and if he did that with his own computer, you would be unable to benefit from that computer until he nullified its status as a god. So, but when he does it to my computer, nothing happens because he cannot cause my computer to become prohibited, through his action. Now, I should be clear. You can't. There is a way to make something, prohibited. So for example, if I take your pot and I cook something not kosher in it, that pot is still prohibited. But I can't. But through the prohibition of idol worship, or if without changing the underlying item itself, there is no way to cause it to be prohibited. V'hazam bidinhu dechatuze lo habetzarich, and so as a result, because it was not truly prohibited as an idol, there really wasn't an obligation for Melech Chizkiah to grind it up. But because King Chizkiah saw that in fact that's what was happening, that people were worshiping it as an idol, he crushed it up. So that was effort number 3, and again it fails. Effort number 4.
My question is, who kept this bronze serpent for how many years? We're talking about
Yes,
1,000 years or whatever, 500 years, 800
That's
years.
exactly right. That's exactly what it seems like.
Where'd they keep it? I mean, they carried it with them in the desert, then they carried it in
Yeah, it's clear
before.
that it. I mean, well, it was, maybe they treated it like the Maloha Omer, that like the vessel that they filled up with the. I'm sorry, the man, the vessel that they filled the man up with the man, that they kept, various things, little sort of souvenirs, so to speak, of their experience in the wilderness. And so this was one of the souvenirs from this experience in the wilderness. Similarly, with Aaron's staff. So you have a couple of items that were kept for a long time. Now, I don't know what ended up happening with Aaron's staff. It doesn't seem like that. I don't know whether that ever gets referred to again, or the man that ever gets referred to again. But this one could understand why people would worship it, because it had healed the people who looked at it. So Amr Lahem, so now Rabbi Yossi with his fourth and final effort, V'halo kvar nemar, v'ya'azvu sham es atzabeihem, that when it came to, in the time of David HaMelech, that when David HaMelech was defeating the Plishtim, the Plishtim left their idols behind, v'yisaim David v'anashav, and David and his men, v'yisaim. Now, what does Vayisa'im mean? That's the implication of Rabbi Yossi's comment, is that the implication is certainly that he crushed it up and dispersed it. Umay mashma dahai Vayisa'im David lishna de zaru yehu. How do I know that this language of Vayisa'im means some kind of scattering to the wind? So Kidmatargem Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef again comes to our rescue and explains and translates. Tizraim beruach tisaim. Exact, that Tizraim and the ruach tisaim. It's a double language. Umetargaminan, and the translation is tazrinun. You're going to scatter it. Beruach titaltalinun, and the wind is going to carry it away. So that's how Rav Yosef explained it, and so as a result, that shows that this Vatisaim means that David HaMelech and his men crushed those idols and then scattered them. So Amrulo Misham Raya. One second, is that really a proof? Harehu Omer v'yisarfu ba'esh. It says that they burned them in fire, and so as a result, they didn't just crush them; they burnt them. Umidulok siv v'yisrafim v'yisaim. Shmamina b'yisaim mamish. And so as a result, from the fact that it doesn't say that they burned them and scattered them, I'm sorry, in Divrei Hayamim, this is where it says that they burnt them. And so the same, which is describing the same event. And so as a result, when it says Vayisaim, it means Shmamina Vayisaim Mamish. It means that they literally carried the idols away. So Mikomakom Kashu Kraya Adadi. So in second, though, there still seems to be an inconsistency. In some cases, they crushed them, and in other cases, they carried them away. So Kidder Rav Huna, the explanation of this inconsistency, whether they crushed them or burnt them, is addressed by Rav Huna. The Rav Huna Rami Ksiv Vayomer David Vayisrarfu Ba'esh. In one places it says that David told them to burn it in fire. Uksiv Vayisaim, and it also says in in Malachim it says, in Shmuel Bet it says Vayisaim that he carried them, and in Divrei Hayamim 1. Parak Yudal Pasuk Yibet, it says Vayisarfu Ba'esh. So how do you address that? So Kasha, it's not difficult. Kan Kodem Shaba Itai Hagiti. One is before Itai Hagiti came, and Rashi explains, what did Itai Hagiti do? Kodem Shaba Itai Hagiti. So 1, 2, 3, 4, from the bottom of the narrow lines in Rashi, it's about 15 lines up. Kodem Shaba Itai Ubitla, and he nullified it. So Amar David L'Sarfim. So before he came, that was when David said that he should burn, that everybody needs to burn the idols. And Kan La'akar Shaba Itai Hagiti. And after Itai Hagiti came and nullified the idols, that's when he was able to take it away. Tiksiv Vayikach es ateres malkam me'al rosho umishkala kikar zahav. Right, the fact is David removed the crown of this idol Milcom from its head, and it weighed a talent of gold. Now it's not exactly clear what weighed a talent of gold, but the implication is that it was the crown that weighed that much. Umishari, but would it be permitted and then the pasuk goes on to say that David put the crown on his head. Umishari, would that be permitted? Isure hananinu. It's a object that was used in connection with an idol, and the item used in connection with an idol is prohibited in Hana. So Amar of Nachman, Itai Agiti ba uvitla. Again, that explains that Itai Agiti came and nullified it, and that's what allowed David HaMelech to use it. But one second, Mishkala Kikar Zahab, it weighed a lot. It weighed a whole talent. According to the calculations here, that's about 60 pounds. That's a lot to put on your head. So Heiki Matzi Manakla, how did he do that? So three potential answers. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, so said in the name of Rav, Ru'uya lanuach al Rosh David, that it was, fit, that it could be on his head. It didn't mean that he actually put it on his head. So that's answer number one. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar, the answer number two, Evan Sho Eves Haisaba. There was a magnet in it, Dahavis Darala, and that enabled it to be higher. And so as a result, it essentially floated there and was partially carried via the magnet itself. And Rabbi Lazar Amar, Evan Yikara Haisaba Shishaba Kikar Zahab. It wasn't that it weighed 64 pounds, but it had a stone in it that, of course, is a lot smaller than 64 pounds, that was worth 64 pounds of gold. So those are three different answers, but bottom line is that that's how it was able to deal with it. So now the Gemara continues by discussing this crown that David had. Zos
How did they have magnets in those days?
What?
How did they have magnets in those days?
Well, there are naturally forming magnets. Yeah. And so, that doesn't seem
to... Things like this do occur. I mean, there are these bullet trains in Japan. They're actually above the rail.
Right.
And there's a magnet, I believe.
Yeah, that's lifting.
That lifts them, so it's...
Correct. But I think Ken's is obviously a lot longer ago than that. But no, there are naturally... Yeah. Yes, the concept is definitely exists, and there are... what I think your point is that there are naturally occurring magnets. That's how... I believe that's how magnets were discovered.
Occurring, but nevertheless.
Yes, exactly. All right. Zos haisali kif kudecha natsarti. So this I had because I guarded your precepts. My kamer. What is this pasuk from Tehillim Kuf Yud Tet saying? So Haki kamer. This is what it's saying. Bischar shepikuducha natsarti zos. Edus, that as a reward for guarding your God's commandments, so I had this, namely the crown, as a testimony. Zos Haisa Lila Edus, I had this as testimony. So my Edusa, how did it testify anything? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Shaya Menicha b'mokom tefillin. Well, he put it on in the place of his tefillin. He put it on his head. V'holamto, and it fit him. So as a result, the fact that this crown that was on this idol had this perfect fit on David's head was an evidence of his being of his appropriateness. 1 second though, but 1 second, didn't David have to wear tefillin? How could he put a crown on his head and also wear tefillin? So Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Makom yesh berosh sheroi laniach bo shtei tefillin. No, there's enough room on the head to put two pairs of tefillin. This is basically understood to mean one in front of the other. That doesn't have to be at the very front of the edge of your hairline, but it could be a little bit further back as well. V'yotziu es ben hamelech v'yenu alav es hanezer ve'es ha'edus. And they brought, and this is a pasuk in Divrei Yamim Bet, pasuk Kaf Gimel, pasuk Yud Aleph, and it's talking about Yoash, who was the sole survivor of Ataliah's attempt to exterminate the male offspring of the house of David. And Yoash was saved and hid. And when he eventually grew up, they put the crown on him, and so Nezer Zo Kalila. This Nezer is the crown. Edus, and it was testifying to him. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Edus hu lebeis David. It was a testimony that he was from the house of David. Shekol haroy lemalchus holamto. That this crown fit whoever it was worthy of being king. Because she'ein roy lemalchus ein holamto, and it didn't fit anybody who wasn't. And what's an example of when it wasn't? Va'adoniah ben Chagis misnasei lemor ani amloch. Right, Adoniah, the son of David and Chagis, tried to say that he wanted to be the king. Rav Yehuda Amarav shemisnase laholmo v'lo halamto. He tried to fit the crown on, but it didn't fit him. Vayaslo rechev ufarashim. Now again, having referenced Adoniah, we're going to explain another pasuk about that he had this chariots and horsemen, v'chamishim ish ratzim lefanim, and 50 men were running in front of him. So my revusaihu, what's the story with these people running before him? Why was there any need to reference these 50 runners? That doesn't seem very remarkable at all. So Tana, a brisa taught, kulam netule tchol v'chakuki kapos haraglayim hayu, that all of them lacked a spleen, that somehow that was going to be something that slowed people down, and they carved out their souls. Rashi says, "V'chokike kapos haraglayim." And first of all, I guess we could do the prior one. It makes it's a heavy. It slows people down. And the chakuki kabos haraglayim natal basar minha etzem. They took the skin off the bottom of the soles. The lo hayu margishim, so that they wouldn't feel the kotzim ubebraknim, that the different kinds of thorns that would exist, so they would be able to run faster and more and for longer. So, okay, so that brings us to the next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah has a wonderful conversation between Proklos, which Rashi notes, first Rashi on the page, on Memdal and Membet. Min, it's a priest, Ovid Kochavim Haya, an idol-worshipping priest. So Proklos and Rabban Gamliel. And this all happens, like as we'll see, Shaul bar Proklos ben Proklosavos, that Proklos, the son of Plosavos, as Rabban Gamliel, whether this is a pun on philosophy, I don't know, but in any event, that seems to be the name. As Rabban Gamliel, he asked Rabban Gamliel Ba'ako, while they were in Akko, Shahaya Roches b'merchat shel Aphrodite. He was bathing in the bathhouse of Aphrodite. Amrlo, and he said to him, Kasav b'Toraschem, it's written in your Torah, Lo yidbak b'yadcha me'uma min acherem, the pasuk that we just cited at the end of the last Mishnah, that you can't benefit from an Avodah Zarah. So, but minai ma rochates b'merchat shel Aphrodite. So how could you be bathing in this bathhouse? So Amar Lo, ein moshvin b'merchat. I can't answer you in the bathhouse because you don't talk Torah in the bathhouse. Ukisha yatsa Amar Lo, and so when he got out, he said to him, Ani lo bati b'gvula. I did not come into her domain. He ba'a leb'guli. She came into my domain, meaning I was here first. Ein omrim nasa merchatz noila Aphrodite. Moreover, we don't say that the bathhouse is an adornment in some way to the Aphrodite. Ella omer nasa Aphrodite noila merchatz. Rather, they made this idol here as an adornment to the bathhouse. It does not, the bathhouse doesn't serve the idol. The idol is just making the bathhouse look nicer. Davar acher, moreover, aim noslin lecha mamon harbe. If I gave you a lot of money, you wouldn't go serve your idol naked, uval keri, and have an emission in front of it, umashtin b'faneha, or have some kind, or urinate in front of it. But this Aphrodite, omedes al pi abiv, it stands by the gutter. V'kol ha'am mashtinin lefaneha, and everybody is urinating there. Lo ne'amar Elohayim, and the point is that we are only prohibited to benefit from their gods. Ve'eshenohegbo mishum Eloah asur. It's only if they treat it like a god. And if it's not treated like a god, it's permitted. Now you may be thinking, well, what about Baal Peor? That one you're supposed to defecate in front of it.
Right, that's like yesterday.
The Gemara will ask that question. We'll see that very shortly. So the Gemara first asks, how could you even answer that you're not allowed to talk Torah in a bathhouse? That in and of itself constitutes constitutes Torah. And so, how could he have done that? That you can think about Torah anywhere, but not in a bathhouse or a bathroom. So this is violating that prohibition. So how could Rabbi Gamliel do that? And if you want to say, well, he spoke a different language, he wasn't speaking in Hebrew. So V'hamar Abaye, but Abaye says Dvarim shel chol, when it comes to secular topics, mutar la'omrim b'lashon hakodesh. You can say them in Hebrew in a bathroom. But Dvarim shel kodesh, when it comes to items that are things that are actually holy topics, asur la'omrim b'lashon chol. You can't even say them in a bathroom in a different language. So that doesn't work. So as a result, so you have to teach it kishe yatsa. When he left, Amar lo ein mashivin b'merchas. We don't answer in a bathhouse. So essentially, he just didn't say anything, and he waited until he left, and then he gave this whole answer.
I just want to avoid hirhurim, thoughts, right?
We are supposed to try to avoid Torah thoughts even in the bathroom. Correct.
I understand that, but they come to one's mind. I mean, what is one supposed to do?
So you do your best. You think about other things. So you try to think about other things. It is said, the lore is that the Vilna Gaon,
he brought a chicken in with him and he played with the chicken.
Oh, that was not the Vilna Gaon that I heard. I heard that he would solve math problems, etc. But okay. In any event, Amar Rabbi Chama bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Oshaya. So Rabbi Chama says that Rabbi Oshaya said Shuva Genuva Heshivu. Really, he answered a trickery answer. Rabbi Gamliel Oto Hegmon, that he gave that official, that leader, a Proklos, a false answer. Vani Omer, but I, namely Rabbi Chama, say Eina Genuva. It was not deceptive. Now we're going to give 4 different ways that maybe it was deceptive and a response and the potential explanation for why it was not deceptive. None of these are being challenged. None of them are being, disputed. So it's effectively 4 different ways that we can understand and, what was meant by this statement of Rav Chama bar Yosef. So my genuvte, what does he mean that it was answer number 1? What does it mean that it was deceptive? De Ka'amarlo, he said, Zoo Medes al Pia Biv, that this, Aphrodite is standing at the gutter, B'kol Adam Mashtin B'faneha, and everybody's urinating in front of it. V'chi Mashtin B'faneha, my hobby, but who cares whether somebody urinates? V'hamar Rava, because after all, Rava says, Po'or Yochiach, Po'or shows that being degrading to a god, an idol, is not going to nullify it. Because people would defecate in front of it. And of course, that would not nullify it. But Rabbi Chama bar Yosef says, no, Eina Genuva, it was not deceptive. Zo, when it comes to Pa'or, Avodah Sabakach, that's how you worship it. Vizo, but when it comes to Aphrodite, Ein Avodah Sabakach, but its worship is not that way. And so as a result, urinating right in front of it would be considered effectively nullifying the status of the idol. So it was a valid answer. A second aspect of that.
Why isn't that all this discussion here between them not a Torah discussion?
Oh, it is a Torah discussion. The whole point is that the Mishnah told us that Rabbi Gamliel waited until he left the bathhouse to have that discussion. So Amar Abaye, explanation number 2 of what Rabbi Chama bar Yosef said, Genuvta mehacha. Here's how it was trickery. De ka'amar le. So when he said to him, Ani lo vasi bigvula, I didn't go into its domain. V'hiva bigvuli, she came into mine. V'hiva bigvula, my hobby. Who cares who went into whose domain? V'hatanan, we have the following Mishnah. There's a Mishnah that we'll see in about a week. Avodas kochavim sheyesh la merchatz ogina. If you have an idol with a bathhouse or a garden, nen in mehen shelo b'tova. You can benefit from that bathhouse or garden as long as you don't show any thanks to the idol. The einan and mehen betova, but you cannot benefit from it with if you are showing some sort of appreciation to the idol. So here, and of course, what does this Mishnah not mention? It doesn't mention whether the bathhouse came first or the idol came first. So as a result, it's clear that it would apply no matter what. So why should it matter to Rabban Gamliel that whether he was going into the domain of Aphrodite or Aphrodite was going into his domain? So Vani Omer, but again, that was the opinion of Rabbi Oshaya, but Rabbi Chama Bar Yosef himself said that I think Eina Genuva, it's not trickery because Shelo B'tovas Rabban Gamliel Kit B'tovas Acherim Dami. Rabbi Gamliel, as Rashi explains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the bottom of all of Rashi, but 6, 9, 12, 14 lines up. Kibitobas acherim. That when it comes to Rabban Gamliel, Shahaya Chashuv, who's so important, Vitova hi lahem kishahu nena mehen, that his benefiting from the bathhouse itself would constitute some kind of tova. So hilkach ilav merchatz kodem haba. If the bathhouse weren't there first, usher kolhani, it would be prohibited. So it's specifically, while in general, if for a person, it doesn't make a difference whether the bathhouse came first or the Aphrodite came first, as long as you're not saying thank you to the Aphrodite and not doing something that benefits the Aphrodite, you're going to be okay to use the bathhouse and enjoy the gardens. But if, on the other hand, you're somebody who's really important and just your importance is going to show that, well, then it does make a difference whether you were already using the bathhouse before the Aphrodite comes in or you only began to use the bathhouse after the Aphrodite came in. And so Rabban Gamliel was saying that, look, this Aphrodite was only put here after I already started using the bathhouse. And so from my perspective, this bathhouse was my bathhouse and I can continue to use it, and I'm not showing any tova to this idol. So that's...
But is they offering a proof? Or is that a proof? Do we know the facts?
Yes, that's what he's saying. That's what he said. He said, Rabban Gamliel said, I did not come into her domain, she came into mine. And so that's exactly what the point is. So that was point number one in his defense. So Rav Shimi Bar Chiya Amar, Rav Shimi says, Genuv tamehacha. No, here's what was trickery. Duka Amar lo, because Rav Gamliel said, Zo omedes al habib, that the person somebody standing, or Aphrodite is standing at the opening of the gutter. V'kol adam mashtinin b'faneha, and everybody's urinating in front of it. V'chimishtaninan b'faneha my habi. But 1 second, who cares about urination? V'hatanan. Now this is a sort of a different version of version 1 of our answer. Now we're not focusing on Baal Peor, but listen to the following Mishnah. This is a Mishnah that we're going to see in a little over a week on Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. Rak b'atanan, rak b'faneha. If you spit in front of it, hishtin b'faneha, or you urinate in front of it, namely an idol, gerura, or you drag it, v'zarak ba'asatsoa, or you throw excrement at it, hare zo eino betela. None of those actions is enough to nullify it. And so as a result, here you're urinating. We have a Mishnah that says that's not enough to nullify. So how could he possibly have said that urination is a proof of nullification? So Vani Omer ain't a genuva. But I say, again, Rabbi Chama himself, as opposed to Rabbi Oshaya, who he was quoting, Rabbi Chama says, no, I don't think it was deceptive at all. Because, yes, ordinarily urination alone is not enough to nullify an idol. But Hasam Lafisha Shata Hudrasach Allah. No, that is talking about a one-time urination. But because maybe after the one person urinated, he'll say, you know what, I want my God back. And so as a result, it won't be a full nullification. And so as a result, urinating alone is not once is not as sufficient for a nullification. But haka, here, what's the story here? Kol shata b'shata b'zulzula kaima. It was a constant flow of urination. Everybody was urinating in front of it, and so as a result, that would constitute nullification. And so as a result, that's why Rabbi Chama says I don't think that it was being trickery to reference that urination. Okay, and finally,
How does that stem with what we said before with the other Mishnah where the people would constantly defecate and urinate and balpour? I mean, if they're doing it, then you would think that would nullify the.
So you're absolutely right. So there's no question that this question understands and assumes the answer to the first question. That absolutely it is also based on the fact that that is not the proper worship method of Aphrodite. If it was the proper worship method for Aphrodite, then 100% that would not be sufficient to nullify it. But when you do something that is constantly degrading to it, even though it's one of the items that are mentioned in the Mishnah on Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, it can constitute a nullification. Okay.
So each idol has its own specific form of worship, I guess.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So Rabba Bar Ulam, our fourth and final interpretation, Genuvta Mehacha. Here's what was deceptive. Because what did Rabbi Gamliel say? Ein Omrin Nasa Merchatz Noila Aphrodite. Right? We don't say that the bathhouse was an adornment to Aphrodite. Ela Nasa Aphrodite Noila Merchatz. Rather, Aphrodite was an adornment to the bathhouse. But one second, V'chi Amar Nasa Merchatz Aphrodite Noi Mai Havi. Who cares which direction it went? Because after all, we have the following brisa of Hatanya Haomer Bayazela Avodas Kochabim. If you say that this particular house is for an idol, or Kozela Avodas Kochabim, or this cup is for an idol, lo amar klum. You haven't said anything. She'ein hektish la'avodas kochavim. The statement itself doesn't matter. All that matters is whether it's used for that item. But the point is it doesn't make a difference which direction it is. So va'ani omer eina gnuba. But I say no. It is not deceptive because the itzure Nehid Itsure lo mitasra. Because, all right, let's say that in fact it is not an adornment to the idol. But the truth is, noi mia ika, the action, the fact that you bathe there, that could be. Meaning, as Rashi says, noi mia ika, last Rashi, 4 lines up from the bottom of Rashi. If washing oneself in front of the idol constitutes an adornment of that idol, asar liyafos avodos kochavim, it would be prohibited because it would be benefiting the idol. Afagaf de itsuri lo mitzar merchatz bahana. Even though the bathing as a benefit, meaning even though benefiting from the bathhouse isn't problematic, the service of the bathhouse or the usage of the bathhouse could be considered a benefit to the idol. So therefore, it does very much matter which came first, or which is serving which. So if the bathhouse is serving the Aphrodite, well then, yes, there is still no prohibition on using the bathhouse as a bathhouse. But there's a prohibition of using the bathhouse because bathing in front of the Aphrodite could be considered a benefit to the Aphrodite. And so as a result, that would be prohibited. But because the Aphrodite is here to serve the bathhouse and not the other way around, that's why Rabbi Gamliel says in this answer that it's not a problem. And that's why Rabbi Chama says that in fact it's not deceptive, even though we see that there's a brisa that seems to suggest that it doesn't make a difference what the order is or who's serving what. Okay, so that brings us to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah, I'm sorry for not scrolling, I have a little bit there. So our next Mishnah, we know we cannot benefit from idols. But what happens when the idol is a mountain? Are you allowed to benefit from that mountain? What's the story there? For that discussion, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Shabbat Shalom. Remember, tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. in the lobby. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. Next week, I will be away, and so Avodah will cover for me, which means that next week we will be all Zoom, all days, all the 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday. God willing, I will be back on the following Wednesday. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. Have a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, easy Tinus.
Yes, a meaningful and easy fast.